Maybe you would call me Everlight Chilton, naive or too trusting. I was once like that, but not anymore. My husband Harris and I met after college while working in neighboring buildings. We seemed to take an almost instant liking to each other. He is very good looking and charming. After 5 or 6 dates, we started having sex. Even though we got along well and had a good rhythm in bed, I was surprised when he asked me to marry him. The reason I was surprised was because I had seen pictures of all his old girlfriends. He didn't hide them from me, and I didn't hide my past from him either. And they were all well endowed. I'm proud of my breasts, but I don't have nice soft curves. As a result of weekly intense exercise, I have an athletic body, but with a huge muscular bubble butt. Anyway, Harris and I got married, and my best friend Ashley Morton was my maid of honor. Ashley's husband Bill, owner of an event planning company, was kind enough to plan our wedding only at cost. Harris seemed to really like Bill, and not just because he made our wedding inexpensive and Ashley. We became and remained great friends with Ashley and Bill, and together we're part of a friendship group of 6 couples. Harris and I agreed on many important things, not the least of which was that we would have at least 2 children, but only after 6 years of marriage. So I regularly took a birth control shot every 3 months, which is important because our sex life never really stopped a nice 3 or more times a week. Ashley is a little older than me. So while Harris and I had been married for about 3 years, and she and Bill had been married for about 6, she went off birth control. At that time, Harris and I shared almost everything except toothbrushes, and only our cars were different. I have a Prius, and he has a Dodge Challenger. He thought my car was too prim. I thought his car was too macho. He hates prim. I hate macho. Plus, while Harris is tidy in our house, his car, at least to me, looks like a pile of garbage with papers, plastic cups, and sports equipment everywhere. So when we go somewhere together, I have to throw the trash from the front seat to the back seat before I can sit down. On that fateful Saturday in May, we were going to a local minor league baseball game, and we're supposed to meet Bill and Ashley there. For some reason, I was ready before he was, which only happens 10% of the time. So I did a more thorough job than usual, cleaning his front seat too before sitting down, even spraying it with cleaner and wiping it down. Just before I finished wiping the seat, I noticed a small box under the seat. The label said, Trojan Treat Pack. I took out the box. On the front, there were 4 types of condoms listed. I didn't know there were so many, and there were 12 in total. I opened the box and counted 3 remaining. I carefully placed the box in my purse and got into the car just before Harris arrived. For the rest of my story to make sense, you need to know that my 2 passions, besides exercise, are theater and cooking. I had been an amateur actor most of my life and had been involved in a community theater production just 10 months before this big day. Also, I love experimenting with all kinds of spices and unusual dishes, which in 90% of cases are well received by everyone who uses them. Having done some of my best acting work, I was warm and playful in my conversations with Harris on the way to the game, while being angry inside and already working on a plan for what I would do about it. Despite the negative impact my discovery had on my mood on the surface, I had a good time. I was tempted to tell Ashley about my dilemma, but then I realized that I had to go it alone and gather a lot more information before I made a decision on all aspects of my investigation, and probably some form of revenge. One of the home team's players wore number 7, just like Hall of Famer Mickey Mantle. I secretly looked for it in the program. His name was Derek Voorhees. He was 23 years old, 6'3", 220 pounds, attending North Carolina at Chapel Hill, his first year on our minor league team, and he led the league in home runs. Using a technique I had long learned, I became fixated on Derek as my anger began to boil over. Much later, after dinner with Bill, Ashley, and another couple when we went to bed, I was not in the mood to have sex with Harris. However, during sex, I imagined myself fucking someone else. I had an incredible orgasm when I mentally had sex with the baseball player Derek Voorhees. Harris must have really enjoyed our fucking because then, as our sweaty bodies cooled and puffed, he whispered, "You really outdid yourself, Everly." Fun, yes, was the most I could say in response without anger breaking through my facade. Luckily, it was enough for him to start snoring after a quick kiss and a brief hug. Surprisingly, I fell asleep soon after, convincing myself that I needed a good night's sleep. To think about my next move, I knew I had to do it quickly to get the box of condoms back to Harris' car. As I was taking out the ingredients to make the pancakes, my eyes fell on one of my homemade spices, a habanero-based blend that I used for Mexican dishes. I had an idea that made me whistle while I was making pancakes. Harris ate 6 pancakes. After breakfast, while Harris was washing our cars in front of the house, I took out a pin and an eyedropper. I mixed the habanero mixture with a little alcohol to thin it out, pricked each of the 3 packages of condoms in the box with a pin, and used a dropper to carefully inject the liquid into the condoms. I knew the dosage was unlikely to give me all the information I needed to catch Harris, but it was good revenge before I went out and hired a private investigator. I returned the Trojan box to exactly where it had been under the passenger seat in Harris' Challenger, and then tried to put it out of my mind. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I worked from home. I had sex with Harris on Monday and Tuesday, and again, I had to think about the hot baseball player in order to legitimately orgasm. Already on Thursday, around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Ashley called me. "Everly, something is seriously wrong. My pussy is burning so bad I'm afraid I'll crash the car if I drive it and Bill is at a meeting in the next town over. Could you please take me to a local clinic?" The sound she made as she said those words were scary, so I immediately took the keys to my Prius and drove to her house just a mile away. She stumbled along, clutching an ice pack to her groin. She had no explanation for the heat in her groin. Luckily, the local clinic was also nearby, and there was a parking space right in front of it. I helped her in and even checked her in using her insurance card and ID from her purse. After that, I asked the nurse if I could come in. Apparently, the nurse thought I was her sister since our facial features, height, and hair are very similar, and muttered what I interpreted as yes. I walked up to the door to the room, and the soundproofing wasn't that good. I heard Ashley say it started during midday sex. I didn't go in but went out into the lobby. Since Bill was out of town at lunchtime and Harris had condoms with habanero sauce, it didn't take a genius to figure out what happened. As hard as it was to believe, I couldn't think of any other rational explanation. Luckily, I had 20 minutes before Ashley came out, still bow-legged, but with a much less contorted and sweaty face. So I regained my composure and relied on my acting skills. On the way home, I briefly and delicately questioned Ashley. "Did they tell you what it was?" "They think it was an allergic reaction to a new skin cream I used on my thighs and crotch." It was a lie that Ashley stammered out. "How soon will you feel better?" I asked with an internal laugh. "Probably in 2 or 3 days." "You won't have to make children for a while," I chuckled. Ashley didn't grin back. If there was any doubt, and there wasn't, it disappeared when I looked at Harris Red hot crutch while he was in the shower. He asked out of sex when I faked it that night. "Sorry, Everly, but for some reason I'm not feeling well tonight." "It's okay, honey, get better," I answered with obvious concern, laughing to myself. After Harris fell asleep, I went to the 24-hour pharmacy, bought 2 condoms exactly like the ones he left in his box, and replaced them with new ones. I put the old condoms in a kitchen garbage bag and threw the bag in the trash outside. The next step was to catch them red-handed. I met with a private investigator, but when I found out how much it cost, I wasn't sure I could hide that amount from Harris. However, what I could do is talk to Bill, but I had to do it right. The following Monday, I had to fake an orgasm for the second time in my life with Harris, because I couldn't imagine the guy playing baseball. I invited Bill to lunch on Tuesday. He was a little surprised, but happily agreed to meet. He was confused when I told him it was about a surprise for Ashley, so he wouldn't tell her. I met Bill in a secluded place. He laughed and commented on its lack of charm. "This is a business meeting, Bill." I answered seriously. "Oh shit, what's happened?" "Before I begin, I need to get a guarantee from you in writing," and I handed him a simple, one-page document. This stipulated that in exchange for me providing him with valuable confidential information, he would keep this. It was a secret for 45 days unless I gave him permission to disclose it earlier. Damages of $25,000 were provided in case of violation. Bill raised his eyebrows, looked deep into my eyes, and apparently concluded that the information was serious, and we both signed and dated the document. I told Bill what I had learned and that I needed his help in hiring a detective. He needed to pay using his business account, and when it was finished I would give him half back. Bill, frustrated, simply picked at his food. I had more time to adjust, and I ate everything on my plate. Although the place was not cozy, it was good food. After lunch, Bill and I went straight to the detective's office and signed the contract. We gave him written permission to watch our homes inside and out and take photographs of Ashley and Harris. Bill and I worked out fake trips out of town over the next week. Me on to East Day and Wednesday until Thursday morning. Bill on Wednesday and Thursday, so that there would be no suspicion that we were out of town at the same time. During my fictitious absence, I worked in Bill's office and he worked in mine. We met with the detective on Saturday after our fake trips. Unfortunately, the news was, as we expected, Ashley and Harris had sex 3 times between Wednesday evening and Thursday morning in the guest room of Bill's home, and it was recorded in bright color or infrared with clear audio. The only good thing was that they didn't scold me or Bill. The question was, what to do about it. After talking with the private detective, Bill and I went to the park to discuss something. We foresaw this, so we thought about it for a while. I spoke. "Bill, no matter what happens next, my friendship with Ashley is over, and my marriage too. Harris is over. I won't interfere with what you decide to do, but I also want to get a little revving on both of them. More than revving you with a habanero." He grinned, although the situation was not funny at all. "Of course more." I snorted. "I think I want to try to save my marriage," Bill said with the air of a hanged dog. "It will depend on how Ashley reacts when I tell her." "Okay, but remember our contract. I need a few more days to decide what to do, so don't pin this on Ashley until I give the go-ahead. I promise it will take much less time than 45 days. Bill shook his head dejectedly. We briefly hugged, and he sadly walked away. That weekend I had to fake another orgasm with Harris. Monday morning, as I was looking through the local morning paper, I looked at the front page. On the front page of the sports section was a photo of Derek Voorhees elevating hat to the hometown baseball crowd. The caption mentioned that he set a team record by hitting 3 homers in one game. I have an idea. Before I reveal my idea, I need to communicate 2 things for it to make sense. One flattering but probably proven truth, and one unflattering but definitely true. Provable the truth. Jacka-woo-one. My hard body is considered hot, and my face is considered cute. After 2. When I'm wronged, I'm angry, nasty, overly vindictive, as half a dozen people from my past will testify with their hand on the Bible. That Monday morning I found Bill between meetings. "Bill, you can run into Ashley whenever it's convenient for you. However, there are 2 conditions on which I insist that you give her the opportunity to remain in the marriage. I need to know one, and I need her temporary consent to the other." "Okay," Bill answered cautiously. "I want you to make her admit how many times over what period of time she and Harris had sex and who initiated it. And I need you to make her promise not to tell Harris what we know until I'm ready. You can do it?" I concluded, holding both his hands and looking into his eyes. After a long pause, he replied, "Fine. I'll talk to her on Wednesday and then call you on your cell phone." Bill called me Wednesday night and said that Ashley tearfully admitted that she had been having an affair with Harris for over a year, usually once a week, and that it started with him coming up to her and saying, "I love your tits." My head almost exploded. Now I was ready for scorched earth revenge. I believed that Harris would want to save the marriage and that I could get him to do something that would go beyond all possible boundaries. Of course, I had no intention of saving the marriage, but he didn't know that. If he is not interested in saving the marriage, then I will develop another win-win plan. I didn't wait. I threw the case in his face, including a couple of incriminating photos from sessions recorded by our private investigator the following Wednesday night, screaming like a banshee. I called him all sorts of names, destroyed 2 pieces of memorabilia from his youth, and threw his pillow and related items out of our bedroom and into the guest room. I then closed and locked our bedroom door and installed a newly purchased door strip between the doorknob and the floor. I ignored the bags and pleads at the door and actually slept for a while, thinking about how amazing my revenge would be. Harris begged and crawled for the next 3 days. Finally, I heard words that were music to my ears. Everly, we can get through this. I love you very much, and I want you and me to have children. Please don't file for divorce. I will do anything to stay married. Anything. Bullshit, I growled. You say so, but you won't do it. I guarantee that you are too damn weak and care too little about me to complete the one simple task that I need to give to our marriage. More one chance. After that, I turned to leave. He gently grabbed my hand. He's Everly, darling, I mean it, he begged. And there seemed to be real tears in his eyes. I stopped and stared at him. He knelt down. Okay, I giggled. Arrange me a night with Derek. Voorhees at a local luxury hotel. Then I turned and walked towards the garage to get into my Prius. You can't be serious. You mean the baseball player? I could never do that. Even if I agreed to this, I have no way to do it. Here are some of his laments. I stopped at the garage door, turned to him, and, with venom dripping from my mouth, growled. I told you that you're not just a fucking cheater, but also a liar. You said whatever and lied. Fuck you. Tell me where you want your divorce papers filed. Then I ran out to the sound of his faint cry. Wait. During this time, Ashley tried to contact me. After avoiding her for a week, I accepted her call. After she admitted how sorry she was, to which I replied that she was only sorry that you're caught. She asked how I found out everything. We were so careful. And whether you believe it or not, we never showed you disrespect. She whined. I didn't respond to her irrational whining, but I saw no reason not to partially tell her. I get it because you're really stupid. I giggled. Did I screw up? She asked with true shock. Hell yes. You called me to take you to the clinic with a burning crotch. I thought the skincare allergy story was fake, and I was sure of it when I was about to enter the room at the clinic and overheard you tell the doctor that you had just had sex. Ashley gasps loudly. Bill wasn't there, and I realized that you were having an affair, and you were disgusting. To me. Imagine my surprise when that same night I saw Harris with a red-hot crotch. After that, I hired a private investigator, and the rest is history. You are so stupid that you had the nerve to ask me to take you to the clinic right after. You had sex with my husband. Don't contact me anymore. You're dead to me, I shouted before ending the conversation. Our house was freezing as we coexisted for the next few days. I refused to have lunch with Harris. I listened indifferently to his pleas for some alternatives to stay together. When Monday evening came the next week, I showed him, but Moore did not officially file divorce papers along with a draft lawsuit against Ashley for alienation of affection, and asked where to serve him. He really broke down and cried. I gave him no mercy. Finally, he regained his composure and muttered, if I agree to your proposal, it will be for just one night with Voorhees, and you won't file for divorce. Of course, I lied. He lied to me for over a year, so I had no reason to tell him the truth. For the next 10 days, I asked him once a day, have you already agreed? I swear I'm working on it, but it's difficult, was his typical response. Then one day he said, you know what could help if I showed him a photo of you naked? Okay, I grinned. But not a digital photograph, but a print in a closed, transparent case, which will be returned to me as soon as he looks. I prepared myself and found a clear case that will simply provide a white color if I try to photograph it. I asked Bill, not Harris, to take 2 nude photos of me, front and back. I was pleased to see how Bill's eyes widened and sweat formed on his forehead as he took photographs, and how he could not speak a word as he looked at me as I slowly got dressed. I don't know how Harris did it. Derek must like fit women, but 3 days after I gave Harris the photos, sweating profusely and in a meek voice, he muttered, I got Derek to agree. He's free next Monday night. I'll rent a room at the Four Seasons. Are you really going to do this? What? I growled. You think you can have sex with Ashley for a whole year and I won't go through with it? I'm looking forward to the best sex of my life, and don't ask me again if I'm going to go through with it. Just give me the key to the room and tell me when to meet him after you sign this application, I said, throwing the 1-page contract my lawyer had drawn up on the kitchen table. The contract stated that what I did as agreed would have no effect if either of us ever filed for divorce. Although I didn't really have much faith in Harris to set up my date, I liked being prepared. So I searched the internet and found many articles about Derek during his time as a star on the North Carolina baseball team, including 2 that mentioned his college girlfriend. She had a distinctive name, and I was able to track her down and talk to her on the phone. The only reason they broke up with her was because she didn't want the life of a baseball wife, and it was clear that he wanted to play for at least another 15 years. Derek's girlfriend from college told me 2 interesting things about him. 1, even though he is a super stud, he is modest and insecure about his sexual prowess. 2, he has a phobia about contracting STDs, and so they both get tested every few months. Without STD test results, he always uses condoms, which I don't like. Surprisingly, on Monday morning, Harris delivered me a key card for room 1725 at the Four Seasons Hotel. Derek wants to meet you at 5 p.m. for dinner. He squeaked in a voice as weak as a mouse's. Give me $140 for dinner, I replied. After Harris left, I took the rest of the day off and got a massage, crotch trim, pedicure, manicure, and facial. After the spa, I went straight to the Four Seasons. Up close, Derek turned out to be even more handsome and muscular than I thought. As expected, he was no fool. Graduated from New York's Chapel Hill. What surprised me was that he was extremely charming and funny. Derek tried to ask about my agreement with Harris, but I interrupted him. Holding his hand and looking into his sexy, azure eyes, I said, we won't talk about this. Derek, you can look at it as if someone gave you an expensive call girl for the night, with whom you can do whatever you want, but without pain, and you don't even have to care whether she has an orgasm or not. I said this to ease any performance pressure he might have, as his ex-girlfriend warned me. Then I continued, you can do it. A smile wider than the Mississippi River appeared on his face. I can do it, he grinned. Also, I want you to know that condoms are not necessary. Here's my doctor's receipt from last month saying I got my 3-month birth control shot, and the lab report just 2 days ago saying I'm STD-free. He smiled even wider, but said nothing. Derek and I had a very pleasant conversation over dinner. I'm only 3 years older than him, so we didn't belong to different generations. And we had a lot to talk about. It felt like it was just a first date between people who wanted to be with each other. The only difference was my initiative. After a light dinner, we walked holding hands through the beautiful grounds of the hotel and the adjacent park where children played baseball and young people played volleyball. After a leisurely 45 minutes, we walked straight back to the front door of the hotel. It's time to get payback from your dear call girl, I whispered in his ear and then quickly kissed him on the lips. Obviously, this was said correctly. His smile grew even wider. When we got up to room 1725, I playfully pushed Derek onto the main sofa, knelt down, and took off his shoes and socks, lightly rubbing his bare skin with my fingers. Then I stood up, kicked off my high heels, grabbed his hands, and pulled him to his feet. I slowly and erotically unbuttoned his shirt, making complimentary or carnal noises as I Did so, tossing the shirt aside and holding out my hands, inviting him to unbutton the buttons of my blouse. This was followed by his tank top and my bra, then his pants and my skirt. He quickly picked me up, carried me to the double four-poster bed, and threw me onto the luxurious coverlet. Then he attacked me like a man possessed. I thought we would take care of him first. Suddenly, he had other ideas. It was absolutely adorable. I temporarily lost consciousness. I pressed myself against his chest and planted dozens of quick kisses on his lips as he chuckled, with a series of interjections such as, "I've never I'll recover," and "What the hell did you do to me?" Between kisses, I muttered, "My whole body is tingling, and I really passed out from the sensory overload." After some bliss, Derek said, "We're both too sweaty. Let's take the covers off the bed, take a shower, and then get under the covers." "Sounds good to me," I grinned. The shower stall was richly decorated with multiple shower heads at different heights. We heated the water and then soaped each other up. Derek lifted me up like I weighed nothing and pressed my back against the wall of the shower stall. I've never had a partner strong enough to have sex with me like this before. It was divine. I temporarily blacked out again. Luckily, Derek didn't. Otherwise, we would both have fallen onto the tile floor. I came to my senses a little. He drilled me with a fluffy towel, picked me up again, and carried me to the four-poster bed, and then pressed me under the covers, completely enveloping me in his arms. I almost never sleep after 6:30 am. When my eyes finally opened the next morning, the room was bright and the clock next to me showed 8:37. I slipped out of bed, did my chores, took a quick shower, and returned to bed. Derek sat on the bed with a grin. When he got up to go to the bathroom, I pressed my naked body against him. "I'm not done with you yet," I growled, gently squeezing him in my arms. "Woe is me," he sighed. I briefly lost consciousness for the third time this morning. I lay on top of Derek, stroking his face and shoulders while he caressed the sides of my breast as we muttered sweet nothings and fell asleep again. Some time later, I woke up with a start, looked at the clock, which showed 10:32, and then poked Derek in the ribs. "Wake up, Rip Van Winkle," I giggled. "Checkout time is 11 am, so get your ass out of bed." We both climbed out of bed and used the toothbrushes and mouthwash provided by the hotel. "How about a quick shower?" Derek chuckled. "Hell no, I don't all recover from communicating with you for another week." I quickly kissed him on the lips. Since we didn't have any luggage to pack, we went down to the ticket counter at 11:01, and then went to the restaurant to have breakfast. We carried on a completely cheerful conversation, occasionally holding hands or touching each other's legs. When we bathrelessed, it was getting close to 1 p.m. He insisted on paying. "Since you embarrassed me by paying for dinner," we got up to leave. Leaving the hotel, we hugged. I looked into his eyes and said, "Last night was supposed to be just for you, but it ended up being more for me. I'm sorry." Derek laughed heartily. "This must be some alternate universe where a hot woman gives me the sex of my life and then apologizes. The vision of your body and face is burned into my ID to remain forever." He chuckled. We kissed each other quickly, and then he said, "So now you are returning to your husband as a faithful wife?" That's what I told him. I smiled. I answered his question vaguely for two reasons. First of all, I didn't want to lie to him and tell him I was going back to Harris because I was divorcing his ass. The second reason was that my time with Derek was so amazing for both of us that I was afraid that he would want to sleep again. I would probably be too weak to resist, but I didn't want to cheat on Harris. Until the divorce was final, I would not have sex with anyone else, except this time with Harris's consent, because I did not want to stoop to Harris's level. We gave each other another passionate kiss. I wasn't in love with Derek, although it probably wouldn't have taken much to fall in love. I was very pleased to see how Harris was humiliated by my night with Derek. I shyly did not go into details, but smiled slyly. Fantastic revenge has been accomplished. Over the next 2 weeks, I fucked Harris several times out of mercy until completed negotiations. for a new job in Washington, far from my current location. I also arranged for storage space and a moving company there and rented an apartment in Northern Virginia for a few months. Harris was surprised and truly angry when I served him with divorce papers 15 days after my night with Derek and told him that all communications would be through my lawyer and that I was leaving town. This time, instead of begging, he ranted, calling me a liar and a Jezebel. It had no effect on me, and I left for DC an hour after it was served. He should have been glad that I filed on the grounds of irreconcilable differences rather than adultery and only asked for a 50-50 split of assets. I had already withdrawn my 50% of liquid assets. The ink had dried on my copy of the divorce decree just a couple of months ago when I was cleaning out my rental apartment in Northern Virginia on a Saturday. My new job was really working out, and I was planning on moving to a nicer place somewhere within the next month. In old shorts, a worn t-shirt, and dirty slippers with her hair down and no makeup, I was doing a belated cleaning of my apartment when the doorbell rang. Since I lived in a safe area, I opened the door without first looking through the peephole. If I had looked through the peephole, I might not have opened it, given how ugly I looked. At that moment, Derek, I almost squealed when I saw who rang my doorbell. "Hey, sexy Everly," he grinned. "You look great." The poor boy must have lost his sight. I wondered if that meant he couldn't play baseball anymore. "What are you doing here?" I hesitated. "Let me in and I'll tell you." He grinned. I moved away so as not to block the entrance. He came in and hugged me tightly, and then we both sat on the sofa in the living room. The answer to the question has many parts. He began with a grin that seemed to widen. The first part is that I was promoted to the major leagues and traded to the Washington Nationals after signing a 5-year contract. I have a new luxury condo less than a mile from here. The second reason is that I finally found you. I asked my agent to look through the court records and found that you filed for divorce. So I asked him to start looking. Luckily, your name is unique enough. I never knew Everly before, even if married and maiden names aren't that unusual. So I found you about a week before I signed my contract. I just got back from spring training and tomorrow is home opener day. I have an invitation that I hope you will take advantage of. Why did you track me? I muttered. Derek laughed. If you have to ask, you must be the best actress in the world because I thought you liked it the first time we met as much as I did. Simply put, I want a relationship with you. I paused for a moment and then said, relationships, not one-night stands. Yes, relationships. I was attracted to your personality as much as your looks, and considering you gave me the best sex of my life. The last thing I want is another one-night stand. It would ruin me for all other women in the future and would probably ruin my career as I would suffer too much for not being with you. I swallowed hard. Do you really think I look sexy the way I do today? Or was that just an offhand comment? Are you really worried about how you look today? He chuckled, then grinning, but at the same time seriously, he said, the answer to your question is yes. I think you look incredibly sexy just the way you are. I'm not entirely sure how what happened next actually happened. Afterwards, everything happened quickly. I met Derek's parents and sister on the opening day of his house, not surprising because my place was next to theirs. We seemed to get along great. I moved into Derek's new house with him a week after it opened. After the season ended, we got married. Unlike his college girlfriend, I didn't mind the life of a major leaguer's wife because when he came home from trips, the sex was amazing. He's now signed his second major contract with the Nationals, and I'm pregnant with our second child. Once a week I draft and then delete before sending an email to Harris and Ashley, thanking them for deceiving them, and then laughing because their hot crotches are responsible for my red-hot love life. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.